Welcome everyone to the fourth broadcast of Creators of Dance Saturdays. Thank you for tuning into our program on this 10th day of April. A little chilly, but we have a very warm program coming up for you. Good evening everyone. My name is Jose Mateo and I am the founder and director of Jose Mateo Ballet Theater, the organization that created Dance for World Community, and Dance for World Community is the parent program of Dance Saturdays, which we're here to talk about tonight. And we're broadcasting live from CCTV in Central Square, and so I welcome you. Dance Saturdays is a series of 10 cultural events, each representing a different form of dance. The events take place at the Sanctuary Theater in Harvard Square on Saturday nights through May 25. The purpose of each event is to celebrate a particular dance community that supports and sustains the dance artists of the greater Boston dance area. These are artists who contribute greatly to the cultural landscape, and we want to give them a little bit more visibility, a little bit more capability to present themselves to our community, basically to demonstrate the diversity and richness that exists right here in our own backyard. So you can meet these artists right here on Creators of Dance Saturdays. This past Saturday, we had an amazing time at the Sanctuary Theater when we featured Johnny and Andres Giraldo, who are the directors of Salsa y Control. So it was all about salsa. We had a wonderful time. This week, we're going to be turning our attention to Greek traditional dance. We have a special guest to help us get a little more familiar with that form of dance. But first, just to tell you that Dance Saturdays is based on the premise that dance is a particularly good medium for bringing people together. I think across all cultures, dance historically has served to bring people together, to engage in the things that matter to that community. So it's a wonderful tool for community cohesion and for civic engagement around the issues that matter to us all. During the remaining 6 weeks of Dance Saturdays, we're going to have an opportunity to meet dance artists from five other, let's see, we have six remaining Dance Saturdays, each representing a different dance form. So you can join us on one of these Saturdays, if not all of these Saturdays, to appreciate and learn something about traditional Greek dance, tap dance, flamenco, contemporary dance theater, ballet, and finally we close the season with West African dance. So be sure to go to ballettheater.org to order your tickets online while they last. We've had some wonderful crowds for our first 4 events, and I'm very much looking forward to this Saturday for Greek traditional dance. I'm eager to introduce our special guest who will tell us a lot about that particular form of dance and her own involvement with Greek traditional dance. But first I want to tell you a little bit about Dance for World Community, the parent project of Dance Saturdays. Dance for World Community is now celebrating its 11th anniversary and has created a network of dance groups, other cultural organizations, local businesses, and social service agencies to come together to really demonstrate this unifying power of dance. And this way we get to not just celebrate all of these different dance communities, but we also get to learn about the cultures that sprouted them. So we're very eager to have you also attend our Dance for World Community Festival, which is on June 8th this year. Saturday, June 8. We will bring together about 70 dance groups on 5 different stages on Massachusetts Avenue, in Harvard Square, and in the Sanctuary Theater. So, well, enough about Dance for World Community. Let's go back to Dance Saturdays, because I'm very eager and thrilled to have with us this evening a talented dance artist who some of you may have seen on stage if you've been fortunate enough to see Boston Lykeion Ellinidon in one of the festivals around town, or maybe at the Dance for World Community Festival, but they are very well known, certainly in the Greek community, but have been very visible in the broader community as well. So welcome Ilyana Sawka, and thank you for being our guest on Creators of Dance Saturday.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
And I understand that, well, tell us about your particular role with Boston Lykeion.
Sure, and hello Cambridge. So it's great to be here at Boston Lykeion Ellinidon. I am the Vice President for Administration, which is a very fancy title, but we're a volunteer-run organization and entirely dependent on our board and our volunteers. And my specific role focuses mostly on logistics, operations, communications, our public relations, basically spreading our mission out there, not only within the Greek community, but as you mentioned, within the broader dance community and arts community in Boston.
Which is to preserve an amazing tradition that has had an influence on all of Western culture and beyond. And this tradition goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's so important to have organizations, and it's so impressive when they're volunteer-run organizations that are dedicated to preserving that history and really sharing it with people outside of that community, as certainly the Greek diaspora here has done. And we're very fortunate in Boston, because if I'm not mistaken, you're one of only 2 chapters of the Lykeion Ellinidon, right?
Exactly. We are one of 2 chapters in the United States. There are now 3 in North America. Montreal just became an official chapter in the last few years. And to explain a little bit more about what that means, the Lykeion Ellinidon is an organization that started in the early 20th century in Greece. And traditionally it's a women's organization, and it recognizes the very important role that women play in preserving cultural traditions through their roles in the family and in the community. And it was a way for women to organize together and to ensure that arts and culture and language and all of the things that intertwine in the arts were preserved and celebrated and passed on from generation to generation.
Yeah, very important. A lot of people think of dance as mere entertainment, and it is and can be very entertaining, but it plays a much more vital role in the community, and this is a wonderful example of that. But you're also a dancer yourself, so tell us a little bit about your own history. You've told me you grew up in New York City, and not necessarily within a Greek community, but certainly with an awareness and appreciation for Greek culture. Tell us a little bit about your encounter with dance.
So I came to dance in sort of a roundabout way. As you mentioned, I grew up in New York City, and I come from a family that's several generations of immigrants, basically. And so our cultural traditions were a little bit mixed. And I grew up actually knowing Greek culture very intimately. It was the first country that I visited outside of the US. I spent 3 months there as a very small child, and those are my first memories, actually. And after that, actually, I didn't have an opportunity to travel back to Greece or become involved with the Greek community for many, many years. But my family does come from Ukraine, which is another country with a very vibrant folk tradition, in which dance is very important. But when you don't grow up sort of as part of a community with close interactions with a group of people, it can be very difficult to engage in these dance traditions. And so I didn't think of myself as a dancer, or rediscover my natural love for movement and dance until I studied abroad in Greece in college. And I had a remarkable opportunity to spend a summer on a Greek island, and we were taught dance as part of the curriculum along with language. And it was eye-opening and just such a beautiful experience that opened the doors to so many wonderful experiences since then, and the understanding that within all of us there is a dancer.
So talk about cultural immersion, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to give everyone a taste of.
Exactly.
Hopefully to open their eyes, open doors for them,
Exactly.
to include these wonderful traditions in their own experience. But then, you know, there's dance, and then there's performance dance. You're going to be on stage, and at some point you must have gained an interest for that. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So actually, I have several roles on Saturday. Not only am I behind the scenes and helping to organize and promote the event, not only am I on stage dancing, as you mentioned, I will also be singing a couple of numbers, because for most of my life I thought of myself more as a musician than as a dancer. I studied clarinet for many years, and I'm a singer as well. And when I moved to Boston in 2008, I was looking for a group to get involved in, sort of a new hobby, a way to meet people. And I reached out to this organization specifically to find out more about opportunities to learn and perform Greek music. And at that time, there wasn't an active music program, but they invited me to come to the dance classes. And I decided I would give it a go, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't go in expecting ever to perform, but as I began to learn the dances, I felt sort of a natural ability emerging, and it was very much fostered by the wonderful teachers at the Boston Lykeion, Mike and Irene. And so one thing led to another, and all of my passions for culture and music and dance all came together.
That's a wonderful story. That's my favorite kind of story. And I always say everyone has a dance story. And it's about discovering the dancer in each of us. And that's a wonderful illustration of that. And let me ask, because you mentioned teaching, and most of us are aware that dance is a tradition that's passed on one-on-one among different people, but it's not something that you resort to books to learn. And you've talked about teachers who kind of brought you into the performance world. Do you find yourself taking that role as a teacher, and in what capacity?
So I think anytime anyone sets off down this road of pursuing Greek dancing more seriously, they find themselves emerging as a teacher, whether they expected to or not. Because the kinds of scenarios in which you end up doing these dances are ones in which there are many generations and many backgrounds represented, and you learn from each other, and you want to share and you want to pass on knowledge. So you mentioned the festivals that we often perform at, and I think that's a really great example of this kind of informal learning and teaching that happens. You'll find yourself out in the big open dance space with a lot of other people, and you will see grandparents teaching their grandchildren to dance for the first time, or you'll meet somebody who brought along friends who are not part of the community but see all of these people dancing together and want to jump in. And so we all end up helping each other out, and walking each other through the steps, and sharing this beautiful tradition with each other.
Well, there's some opportunity to experience just that, isn't there? On Saturday, there's some
Absolutely.
participatory dance, and
Absolutely.
some of this will be led through some teaching by
Uh, exactly. So actually, Alex Ruggieri, I believe, will be teaching a short dance class before the event starts, if I'm not mistaken.
At 6:30 maybe?
6:30.
So you want to come early?
So that will be a fantastic opportunity. But because the participatory element of the kind of dance that we do is so important to us, we've actually built it in throughout the program. So you'll have the opportunity to see us perform and hear the poems read and hear the live music. And then at the end of each set and during the intermission, we will play music and be alongside you to help you jump on stage and get to experience this for yourself. What it's like to join hands with a group of people that you've never met before, probably, and
That's that
get to know
unifying
each
power.
other through dance. Exactly.
Exactly, and well, we're going to have more than one opportunity. There's the class before the event, so the doors open at 7, but you can come earlier, like 6:15, and participate in a lesson that's going to happen before the event. But then during the event, people are going to be invited to get on their feet, correct?
Exactly.
And experience some of this firsthand. And I think that's where you appreciate the contagion, because once you're on your feet, you realize it's a form of life to just be moving, particularly to music. So you've mentioned live music, and you're a musician. So tell us a little bit about the music that we're going to hear.
Sure. So we will be joined by a band called Revma, and the band leader is actually a member of our board and a former dancer with our troupe. We're one big family, basically. But what Revma does is preserve the really unique traditional music of the various regions of Greece, the mainland, the islands, and other areas that have been touched by the Hellenic world. And I specify the traditional music because there are a lot of wonderful, wonderful bands in the Boston area that play Greek music, but most of them play a more modern kind of Greek music that emerged in the 20th century. And it's sort of like the difference between pop and folk music in a
Anything
way.
that's 20th century is
And
adulterates the tradition to some extent.
To a non-Greek ear, it may sound very traditional, but there's actually a very specific kind of instrumentation and lyrics and other things that differentiate it from true traditional music.
Right, and so we're going to get some of the real stuff, right?
Exactly.
And you're a vocalist, so
Yes.
we will be hearing you. I take it along with some other musicians.
Yes, I will be, and it's pretty exciting because you don't actually often hear Greek music performed a cappella, just like you don't often hear Greek music performed without people dancing to it. And so I'm excited to not only be able to present a really traditional experience, but also to add our own little twist on it by offering a couple of numbers that are really exposed so that you can hear the vocal line and the uniqueness of the melody.
I won't put you on the spot, but I'm eager to hear that. And nothing's more beautiful than the human voice. Although I'm sure that the instrumentalists that are going to be present on Saturday are also worth mentioning. So tell us a little bit, or let me just mention to our viewers that in addition to the live music and the dance, the participatory dance, the performance, the poetry, there will also be an exhibition by a wonderful photographer, Robert McCabe. He's world renowned, and he has done many photographs of Greece and Greek life. And so we're going to be displaying some of his photographs of dancers in community in Greece. And I hope there'll be someone there to help teach us more about that. But just from a visual point of view, they are beautiful photographs. So we're going to have photography, exhibition, poetry, live music, and a number of different dances. My understanding is that there are two parts to this, and one is about dances of the mainland, and another part is going to focus on dances of the islands. So there are many, many different styles of Greek dance. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Absolutely. So our dance group is fairly unique among many dance groups in the area in that we perform dances from all over Greece, from the islands to the mainland, to areas, as I mentioned before, that have been touched by Hellenism but now belong to other nations. For example, the Pontic tradition, which is now in modern day Turkey. And there really is a difference between the feeling and the stylization, the movement of the mainland dances and of the island dances. When we teach, we often talk about mainland dances being very rooted to the ground. They're more flat-footed. There's a very different movement in the dances themselves, not to mention the very different instrumentation and musical styles. And then the island dances are much lighter. We ask our dancers as they're learning to think about themselves as being on a boat on the sea, bobbing on the waves, because you are much lighter on your feet, and there's a very characteristic up and down movement that's very like the bobbing of a wave on the sea. And so we'll be taking you on a journey through all of these places, from northwest Greece, which has a very mystical musical tradition based on the pentatonic scale, to the island of Crete, where there are these amazing, very performative, almost militaristic dances that show sort of the power of a male dancer, to some of the gentler dances of the Aegean islands, for example, and everything in between, really. So we're looking forward to introducing you to what range and variety such a small geographical area, relatively speaking, can give birth to.
Small today, but as you mentioned earlier, the influence really covered a lot of territory, and some of those countries that now occupy those territories still can trace the influence of Greece on their own cultures. And so these are beautiful images you're giving of the mainland versus the sea, and that range, that variety exists in the costuming as well, right? And we're going to be displaying some costumes as well, so you're going to get a close-up view on these differences that you're referring to. So tell us a little bit about the dress, if you can.
Sure. We have an extensive library of traditional attires, many of which were handmade for us in Greece using traditional embroidery techniques or weaving techniques. And they're really colorful and vibrant and very, very different, not only from region to region, but even village to village. A village might have its own style of wearing a kerchief or a different embroidery that would be traditional on an apron. And so each of our dancers will be wearing a different attire or costume for each set to really showcase a wide range of what belong to these different regions and villages.
It's very exciting. I've only been in Greece once, but I made sure I got to a dance performance that was specifically about that broad range of costuming, music, and dance traditions. And it was a long time ago, so I am very much looking forward to having my memory refreshed in this live experience. And Horos, am I pronouncing that correctly, is the word for dance.
Dance.
And that is the title of Saturday's event, right? Do the various dances have their own names?
Yes, there. There's just such a huge encyclopedia of dances, and I think what's amazing about it is that, unlike, for example, ballet, nothing is sort of codified in a, in a sort of specific list of names. But yes, there are families of dances. There are dances that are common across Greece with their own regional differences, and then there are dances that are attached only to a specific song, for example.
Okay. And is there notation for this, or how are these reconstructed typically?
There really is no notation. I mean, there was a lot of work done by folklorists at various points in history to travel around Greece and make notes and record the lyrics to songs and sort of unique characteristics of when and why these were danced and by whom, etc. But it's really a tradition that is passed on from teacher to student, from elder to child within communities, within villages.
Well, and then there's that whole oral tradition too, and I guess you that is still something that you can get firsthand if you go to the right places. Am I correct?
Definitely. Particularly on the islands, for example, Crete, or an island called Kalymnos, there's a very rich tradition of oral poetry and improvised sonnets, basically. And those are actually performed in conjunction